There are some pieces of technology out there that whenever I pick them up, I just... You know what I mean? It's kind of like whenever you're peeing and then right at the end you get those pee shivers and you're just kind of like... I get this feeling a lot whenever I pick up something like the iPod Classic or the Sony W830 or my childhood Game Boy Advance SP. But none of these compare to the feeling that I get whenever I pick up a Steam Deck. In a handheld market that's absolutely exploding with new devices getting released what feels like every single week, and some of them even have SteamOS on them, the Steam Deck is just like this immovable prophet that is just destined to be the chosen one. It's literally become a meme at this point. Whenever anybody asks, what handheld should I buy? Everybody collectively responds with, just get a Steam Deck, bro. I've been playing Steam games since I was 11, and back then whenever I would try and do anything portable, I would just bring my mom's chunky Dell XPS from her work, and then I would just beg her to let me install Steam on it so I could play Terraria whenever I was on the plane or on a car ride or doing anything. Just being able to play this on the go was mind-blowing to me. Also, Terraria is a better game than Minecraft. I will die on this hill. Fast forward 14 years later, and now I'm holding what my younger self would have called nothing short of a miracle, and that's because it is. What's truly crazy is that I still feel the same way 3 years after its release. So please join me for the next 20 minutes as I give you a visual love letter to one of my favorite gaming handhelds and explain to you why I think it's already made handheld history. When a company decides to make a product, the philosophy and vision behind that product are by far the most important thing when it comes to creating something that's high quality and timeless. We've gotten a good variety of hardware from Valve over the past few years. Not all of them are amazing, but you can definitely see the intended vision that they were going for with each product. I bought a Steam Link in 2016 before game streaming was really even feasible, and this was incredible. Me and my only friend that lived at my apartment complex would just hang out in the living room and we would play Gang Beasts over and over again for like 5 hours. It felt like a dream just getting to play Steam games anywhere else besides my PC, and this for the first time opened my mind up to the possibility of, wait, what if we just got this in a portable version? The Steam controller, on the other hand, is just a disgusting abomination that you can't even call a controller because it's the worst. At least that's what I thought. This thing actually brings mouse controls decently into a controller, and if you're using the right trackpad for things like controlling the camera or, like I said, a mouse, it's relatively intuitive, and so many people will die for this goofy looking thing. Steam machines were a great way to show off how viable and natural SteamOS felt and how it could convert a PC into a console-like experience just to play Steam games. And while these machines weren't successful by any means, it definitely taught Valve that SteamOS, although immature at the time, was a valid option for a future release to create a console experience, and that they should probably be the ones making the hardware themselves. Now, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but there must have been a meeting at Valve where God whispered into an employee's ear and was just like,
wait, what if we combined all of the good things about these products into a Nintendo Switch?
The Steam controller showed them the value of custom inputs and haptics. The Steam machine showed them how powerful and console-breaking a dedicated Steam device could be, and the Steam Link showed them how valuable it was to be disconnected from your PC, even if it was just a different room. And Valve said, hold on a second, let me do a little combining here and create a masterpiece of a handheld. But the true defining edge for a lot of us with the Steam Deck is the fact that it was created with the idea of being open. And in a corporate world where the future is becoming more and more limited, this is very refreshing. So Valve have nailed the philosophy here, but how did they convert this into a physical piece of hardware? The Steam Deck is huge. It's one of the chunkiest boys in the handheld scene. It's not the biggest gaming handheld we've ever seen, dude. The X1 is like a freaking semi-truck. Like, I don't even know who's buying this thing. It's so big for no reason. The Steam Deck is up there in size, and it's just touching the limit of portability. My wife has some pretty tiny hands, but man, it's still still works even with this giant handheld. Much like the Steam controller, the layout of the controls and D-pad here can seem a bit off-putting at first, but once it's in your hands, you kind of just understand it. The D-pad doesn't feel too far out of reach on the side, and then the thumbsticks are better than any Joy-Cons I've ever felt from a Nintendo Switch, even the Switch 2, which I'm still kind of upset about because, you know, it's been years and Nintendo still haven't figured out the Joy-Cons, but anyway, this is a Steam Deck video. Most smaller handhelds have to choose between a D-pad on the top or a thumbstick on the top, but here we've got both options. So retro games or side scrollers that lean and rely on that D-pad feel great, and so do modern releases that need the thumbsticks. Valve even added extra programmable buttons on the back because why not? Personally speaking, my favorite part about this is the thumbsticks and the buttons. I'm not a huge fan of the D-pad on the Steam Deck. I think it could be improved a little bit. It just feels a little too mushy for my liking, but overall, I think it gets the job done. And of course, the signature feature of the Steam Deck is the Trackpads. These are what makes it feel like an actual PC and not just some handheld. Whenever you dive into Linux and start messing around with files or folders, relying on these trackpads is seamless and doesn't take long to learn. With this inclusion, you complete the full circle of handheld controls and you get everything you need, and it somehow all fits into one modern looking package. And last but certainly not least, man, it's the OLED screen. You can quote me on this, but 7.4 inches is the perfect size for me. Every game feels like a movie, deep blacks, great saturation, 90 hertz refresh rate. We've got a killer setup for any type of game. Most recently, I just purchased Silksong and I'm starting to play this game, and from what I've heard, this is a more difficult version of Hollow Knight, which is exciting, and the deck is a killer system and device to play this one on, which is a perfect segue as to why some people refer to the Steam Deck as the Backlog Destroyer. I don't know when the last time you looked at your Steam library was, but Lord have mercy, you've probably got like $200 worth of games that you haven't even installed yet. A big reason why I stopped playing so many games over the past few years is because I've realized that I was just trying to fill this endless void of a lack of connection in my life, but also because I do most of my work in my room on my gaming PC because that's the only computer and space that I have. So the idea of staying locked away in the same exact room even more during the day sounds exhausting. And as stupid and privileged as it does sound, having a dedicated device to strip me away from this room that I'm constantly stuck in all day is so refreshing and has been very, very impactful on my mental health. The only time I play games on my PC now is just to play Peak or Lethal Company. Oh no!
Take off.
Why did I switch the camera?
Dude, does she not know? Dude,
Well,
she doesn't know.
I guess I can't
She
get
does. And the Steam Deck, while it might be a portable device, can play so many different kinds of games. But where it really shines is with indie games. Dave the Diver, Hollow Knight, Cuphead, Celeste, Death's Door, Slay the Spire, Tunic. These are the games where the deck will give you that tingle I mentioned earlier because you never have to worry about specs and performance and can just immerse yourself directly into the game. A lot of people get super into the weeds with like specs and performance with the Steam Deck and a lot of other PC handhelds. I'm not really that type of person when it comes to these things. Like, I don't really care that much about squeezing out an extra couple of frames because, you know, it's just 3 frames. And a big reason I have this laid back POV is because if I'm playing a game where I'm worried about the frame rate, most of the time I can just stream it from my PC. And because of this portability and game streaming alone, I've also seen the Steam Deck be such a common item for dads or quite literally anybody who has a normal busy schedule. It's impossible to raise a child without inflicting some sort of trauma, but I'm hoping if I ever have kids that the only thing they complain about is that I just played the Steam Deck too much. A lot of us just don't have time to sit down and commit several hours on your couch or on a console to a video game. We've got maybe 20-30 minutes of a couple of bursts here and there, and I know for a fact that the Steam Deck is the only thread that's keeping so many people still involved with gaming. This argument can literally be made for anything on the planet that lets you play video games portably, but the Steam Deck has found a very, very precise middle ground inside of my brain where it sits right between a Switch and a PC handheld. Since this thing is running Linux, I have this sense of freedom that a lot of these PC handhelds give a consumer, but also I have that polished edge that Nintendo consoles oftentimes bring because of how great and gorgeous SteamOS is. If you never wanted to use desktop mode on a Steam Deck, you could totally get away with it and it would feel like a complete console and you'd never really have to think twice. But once you do flip the switch and cross over to the dark side, the possibilities open up. I'll just add to the echo chamber here, but if you have a Steam Deck and you're not using EmuDeck, I don't know what is wrong with you. You're missing out on not only having a great gaming PC handheld, but also one of the best retro emulation devices that money can buy. It's mind-blowing how good this thing is once it gets converted with EmuDeck. You can start playing your retro games literally inside of SteamOS and launch them from Steam, or if you're feeling a little bit quirky, you can install ESDE and have a dedicated front end for all of your retro games. So now you've got the best of both worlds, modern games, even some AAA games, indie games, and this huge catalog of retro classics. Another beautiful thing I installed here on the software side is Decky Loader. This lets you customize the Steam Deck, so I've had a blast getting my Steam Deck up to an aesthetically pleasing experience that actually looks like mine. So you can change the boot logo, you can change some animations, and make this thing feel even more personalized to you without ruining the experience. I mean, just look at this thing, dude. The shivers are back, dude. I'm just like, I think a lot of people share my same passion and excitement for the Steam Deck specifically because you can see all the positivity behind the community and the people that are driving this thing forward. There's definitely like a cult following for this machine because it feels so different than anything else on the market right now with all of these handhelds that are swarming in. And I think a big part of that is because the Steam Deck is still relatively small compared to something like the Switch. I mean, sales-wise, this thing barely holds a candle, but when you consider everything you get and the value proposition, it's easy to see why so many customers who bought this thing are so satisfied with their purchase. A lot of people, myself included, who have made this purchase do feel like it was warranted and they've gotten their money's worth out of it. Now, it's not a perfect device by any means. I have been buttering this thing up way more than, you know, the mashed potatoes that my grandma makes. Okay, how much butter do you put in your mashed potatoes?
Yes.
To be honest, I don't think the Steam Deck needs to change much, and I know a lot of people are constantly asking for a Steam Deck 2 or like the next generation of the Steam Deck and want to hypothesize what that would be, but I don't see any reason as to why Valve even needs to release another Steam Deck with how great this thing is. Obviously, having better performance would be great, but there's still so many workarounds like I talked about with game streaming, and I think my ultimate biggest gripe is just the battery life on this. If you're playing really demanding games like Baldur's Gate 3 natively, you're gonna look at maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours max of battery life. It just gets sucked dry. But if you're playing lighter titles, battery life isn't as big of an issue, but it's certainly something that a lot of people consider other PC handhelds for just because they want to play games for longer periods of time. I don't know who this really applies to though, because a lot of people just play on the couch and like you could just plug it in right there and it's not that big of an issue, so I don't know. I've just recently tapped into black frame insertion, which makes me kind of wish that the panel was 120 hertz, so that's also another complaint, just so that I could activate even better retro gaming experiences on the Steam Deck, but I definitely think that's more nitpicky. Valve themselves have even said that they're waiting for a generational leap in computing power before they make the next Steam Deck, which to me is perfectly fair and actually just makes the Steam Deck feel even better, because if you buy into the OLED, you've still got a couple years before some new and shiny product gets delivered right in front of you. I think the most justified problem is the size and the weight of this megalodon handheld, and while that is one of the best reasons to get a Steam Deck, I would love to see a new iteration that isn't necessarily a Steam Deck 2, but a Steam Deck Mini. The Steam Deck is so big that people literally buy pillows so that their arms don't fall asleep. I love all the retro handhelds and the form factors of those, and running SteamOS would be sick. I know that it's possible to technically put SteamOS on some of these handhelds, but getting an official Valve release of a Steam Deck Mini that is dedicated to just being an indie game destroyer would make me just, I mean, I'd get more tingles, bro. I'd get the feeling again. I would cream. All of these things to me are not deal breakers, and the Steam Deck still wins out. And since enough time has passed for people to mod and customize the device to their liking, it's only getting better and it's just aging like fine wine. I truly believe that with enough time, we're gonna look back on the Steam Deck in the same light and in the same way that we talk about the PSP or the DS, because they felt revolutionary and like a huge standout moment. You could absolutely make the argument that it's still in the shadow of the original Switch, but with the philosophy and the approach that Valve have made towards creating the Steam Deck, it's built a huge following of dedicated, passionate users, and the best part is that it's still getting better every single year, which is why the answer will forever remain to just get a Steam Deck, bro.
A daily question, I might dodge the answer. Insecurities duplicated like stubborn cancer. I see myself in that mirror but think it never matter. My heart is weak and if you get too close it might shatter. I hate the chatter, but that's just what it takes this day and age.